everyone wants something faster. And the
Mhm.
idea for the story kind of came from my AirPods. I was listening to an audiobook and it was kind of a slog. I was getting through a book and it was taking a long time. And I'm like, oh, it'd be great if I could just get through this and get the idea and move on. I'm like, oh, that'd be kind of cool if there was a device that could do that. And then you start thinking, well, what's the danger? What do you give up if you get everything so easy? If everything comes so quickly, what do you lose? And I think with stories, if it comes so fast that you don't have to work for it. And when you read a novel or I mean, I think audiobooks too. I think when you listen to an audiobook, you can have that same journey. You experience a connection with the characters and a connection with the story, and it's different for different people. Like I might read The Lord of the Rings, and I get something, and my favorite characters could be different than someone else's favorite characters, and my connection and it has a different impact on me because of when I was reading it and what was going on in my life when I read it.
Hello and welcome to A Literal Odyssey, a place where I interview fantastic authors of great stories. And in today's episode, we definitely have a fantastic author of fantastical stories, Frank Cole. Frank L. Cole was born into a family of Southern storytellers and wrote his first book at age 8. It was, of course, a masterpiece, but it was lost, and Frank has spent the rest of his life trying to remember it. That's what I would say too if I'm like, I don't know what I do with that masterpiece. I lost it. Currently, along with his wife and 3 children, he resides in the shadow of a majestic western mountain range, which is most likely haunted. And I'm going to have to ask you a follow up on that. Frank has visited hundreds of schools nationwide, promoting the value of reading and using imagination to solve problems. And he can now say with confidence, the library has no need to hide from me. The Legend of the Last Library is Frank's 15th published book. Frank, thank you so much for
Yeah,
agreeing to do this interview. It's an honor.
thank, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Real quick before we get into the real questions here, what do you mean by the haunted mountain range? What leads you to believe that your mountain range is haunted?
Maybe not. Maybe I don't know if I believe it or not. I want to believe that it's haunted. I would love. I'm a big fan of anything like that. Anything creepy. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was an older gentleman talking about his farm, and he mentioned some sort of ghost story, and I was hooked. I didn't even care what he was saying after that, and everyone else was kind of, you know, just laughing it off. And I'm like, "Tell me more. Where did you see this? I want to take my kids." So I came home and told my middle son, he's 21 years old, and I told him about it. He's like, "We gotta go. We gotta go see this."
How old are your kids?
So my oldest is 23, and he's married now, and he's been married for a year. I think he's 23, almost 24. And then my middle son's 21, just turned 21 a couple weeks ago, and then my daughter's 17.
Oh, you did good. I've learned that dads aren't really expected to know the exact age of their kids. It's okay. We get a
Yeah,
pass most of the time on
yeah.
birthdays and all that stuff. But what,
Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I get their birthdays. I think I got their birthdays down. But yeah,
Good.
sometimes I forget how old they are.
Well, I'm with you on anything haunted. When we got our this house, they built this house. We're out in Grantsville, Utah. And when they built this house, my wife's very serious. I'm very not. I'm the complete opposite. We're walking through it, and we're walking through it with them, and they said, you have any questions? My wife was asking a lot of questions, and then they came to me and they're like, "Did you have any questions?" I was like, "Yes." Was this house built on a graveyard of some sort? Any stories of hauntings? And they looked at me like I was joking. I was like, listen, it's actually a selling point if it was.
Yeah.
I would be more interested in the
Oh,
home.
yeah. 100%. I'd be more interested. I mean, it depends on the type of ghost. If they're gonna really torture us, I don't wanna be in that. But if it's like a ghost pops up every now and then, that's fun.
Yeah, you want a funny story. I mean,
Yeah.
it adds variety, to doing laundry and dishes. Like, well, there's a ghost here too.
Yeah, just
So
knock the dishes over. That's okay.
that's it. Yeah, you go on one side, you turn around, and all the things are stacked up like, oh,
Yeah.
poltergeist. Yeah.
Poltergeist. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I told you. This is gonna be a very different interview than what I saw in, Frank's bio that, there was mention of Bigfoot, and I was like, "Oh, yes, this is gonna be a great one. This is gonna be a good one." Well, give our listeners, our viewers, a bit of background on yourself. What's your personal story, and what got you into storytelling?
Yeah, so I started pretty young, really enjoying just creeping out my friends, creeping out my family. I started scribbling down ideas in junior high. I mean, in elementary school, I would come up with stories, and then I remember writing stories like horror novels, trying to write horror novels and scaring my brother and sister, and they didn't like it. And then it just kept continuing. And then when I got married, my wife was the one that suggested that I try to get published. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I should do that. And of course, if for those that have tried to do that, it's not like, oh, today I decide to be published and tomorrow I am. It was like an 8-year journey of hundreds of rejections of trying different things out. My first book that I thought was amazing was never published, and it will never be published because it's just not very good. But then I finally found a publisher that would take a chance, and I did 7 books with them, and then I was able to get an agent, and my agent Shannon was phenomenal at selling my next. Uh, I guess it's been 8 or 9 books that she was able to sell to different publishers. So I've been doing it for my first book came out in 2009. So we're going on. It's over 16 years when my first book came out.
Tell our listeners about your first published book. What was that like, writing it and then actually getting the acceptance for that?
Yeah, so it was because it was very difficult. I because back in the day, you didn't send emails out. You had to print off your manuscript and send them in envelopes. And I think I sent out 100 plus envelopes of manuscripts to different publishers, and they were all no's. And most of them weren't kind at all. They were just no, not interested. Nice try, that type of thing. And very brutal. And sometimes I wouldn't get it back, and I tried to figure out where the manuscript was. But I was introduced to Cedar Fort, which is a smaller press, and they said, yeah, we'd like to see what you have. So I sent them my first book, and 3 months later they came back and said, no, this is not, we don't want this, but we like your style. Could you send us something else? And I had happened to be writing for the past 5 years on a book called The Adventures of Hash Brown Winters. I think I have it. Yeah, it's this one right here, The Adventures of Hash Brown Winters. It's a little really silly elementary age kids, with a sixth grade mafia, playground, prison, that sort of thing. And but it was like me growing up in elementary school, the imagination of a third and fourth grader, and that's the one that made it. I remember when that email came through and said we would like to publish it, and I was kind of shocked. My wife was the one that screamed because I've been trying for so long, and
Wow.
that's just how it got started. So then it's you know, yeah, that was 16, 17 years ago when that happened.
How do you come up with, more ideas? Like, at what point do you say, "Hey, this idea is good. I'm actually gonna spend a lot of time on this," because it's quite the commitment once you get to that point to decide to write a full manuscript and then carry through to the end. At what point do you think this is a great idea?
I get a lot of ideas, and I think uh, now I have you authors have a lot of self doubt, and so we always
Mhm.
kind of edit ourselves and think that. But I think when an idea doesn't leave, and it's just I start asking questions, and I come up with answers, and I'm like, oh, okay, I really like how that. For example, I was the Legend of the Last Library, my most recently published book. I was actually supposed to be pitching a horror novel, a middle grade scary story. That was my agent said, hey, why don't you try? And I wanted to write some as well, so I pitched some ideas, and they weren't kind of landing, and I pitched a couple more, and at the very end, I had just had this idea of paragraph about this girl in the future that hunts for paper because paper doesn't exist. And she ends up finding a book, and it leads to the last library. And my agent said, that's the one. What is this one? And I'm
Wow.
like, I don't know. That kind of came to me. And uh, that's the one we pitched, and that's the one that we put out. So it's interesting how it comes about like that. You don't always know what's going to stick and what isn't gonna stick. You might think of one idea is gonna be amazing, and then it's not, but
Yeah. So related to that, in the writing world, we sort of have a spectrum of writers. There's plotters, people who plot out their story, the structure meticulously, and then there's pantsers, people who are doing it by the seat of their pants, just seeing where it goes. Where would you say along that spectrum you fall?
I'm a 100% pantser, and it's very difficult to be a pantser in the publishing world because I don't
Yeah.
think publishers love pantsers. They appreciate what we do, but at the same time, they're like, "No, if we're gonna buy this book, we wanna know exactly what's gonna happen." I'm like, "I don't know what's gonna happen," and it's very difficult. I'm pantsing my way through a book right now, and it's hard. It's so hard, but I can't write any other way. If I try to plot it out, the creativity just dries up.
Well, I mean, related to that, I have a question about, what the hardest part of writing is for you. Is that what you would consider to be the hardest part of writing?
Yeah, I think that's well, it's hard to say. I think it's after the book comes out and then trying to sell your book and trying to get readers, and then
Mm,
that's very difficult because your writing journey doesn't stop once you've published a book. Now you've got to make a connection, you've got to meet readers, and you've got to convince people to buy your book, all while not trying to sell them your book. You want them to just find it and love it, and it's that's a difficult process of it. But yeah, I think pantsing is so hard. I have some friends that are plotters, and they drive me nuts because they know exactly what they're doing, and they can go and sit down and write for an hour, and it's very productive. I can sit down for 4 or 5 hours, and all I've written is a sentence, and I have no idea what I'm doing,
yeah.
and it was a waste of a day, I feel sometimes, so
Yeah, I'm a little bit on the pantsing side when it comes to characters. I let them there's room for them to breathe and do their own thing, but man, I've got to map out. I got an extreme map with like a story, like I know where I want it to go, but how they get there, it's a little fluid.
yeah. Yeah, I think I've gotten to the point where I plot a little bit more now, where I have a general idea, but the problem is when I'm pantsing them off a different direction and never I have to figure a way to tie it back. I'm like, that is way off. I did that once with a second book in the series, and I came up with this crazy ending that I loved at the time, and it was published. And then I had to write the third book, and I'm like, I don't have any idea how to wrap this up. I have no idea. And I kept asking, can I write 4 books? And they're like, no, it's a trilogy. You got to write the third book and that's it. And that was so hard to write because I had created the problem myself.
So then, that's the hardest part of writing. What would you consider to be the most joyful or the best part of writing?
Um, Probably the same thing because, well, when all of a sudden an idea hits you and it just consumes you and you see it come together. I read to my wife a lot, so I'll read. She's probably so sick of it, but I read bits and pieces and chapters to her. And when the story is starting to evolve and come together and it's filling in the gaps, it doesn't feel natural. It feels like this is otherworldly what just happened. How did the story come out of my head that is really confusing? And so when it starts to come together, it's kind of a really cool moment. And then meeting readers, I love it. My readers are younger, and so I get to meet readers, and when they're excited to meet me and my story has impacted them some way, that's pretty amazing.
When you read the stories to your wife, are you doing the voices of
Yeah.
different characters? Yeah, okay, good. I'm not the only one. Okay.
Yeah, and I can see
I
and she knows she's rolling her eyes because 'cause I'm like, "Well, that's might not be their voice, but that's the only voice I know how to do right now," so
Yeah. When you're driving in your car or something, and are you writing out scenes and you're kind of acting them out and stuff in your
yes, and
head?
I my favorite app is, like, the little voice recorder, so I'm like, "Oh," and so I'll hit the voice recorder, and I'll just be driving and talking and telling myself an idea, and
That's
then I go
genius. That's what you do.
yeah.
You're taking notes on
Uh-huh.
stories?
And then I'll go
That's
back and then I'll start typing it up and then it gives me like I have a notes page which is thousands and thousands of words of little audio clips that I have put in. Sometimes I delete them like that's a dumb idea. I'm not going to do that. But
wow.
I when it hits you, you've got to find a way.
So do you know who Jonathan Stroud is?
I do know who John I've never met Jonathan Stroud, but
Yeah.
loved some of Jonathan Stroud's books over the years.
Yeah, I interviewed him. I mean, he and I are friends now, and his I'm probably closer to his marketing agent. But I was asking him, it's like, do you, when you're writing books, do you do voices too? And I was a little too excited about it. I was like, so you do voices too? And he looked at me and he goes, no. And I went, oh, me neither.
Yeah, those people are weird.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know any author who does that. That's just crazy. At what point in writing and publishing did you feel like, wow, this is actually successful? I'm doing this is incredible. What's happening? Did you feel a moment of success?
Um, no. I it's been hard. It's hard. You have to take a step back every now and then. It's other people that usually remind me of the success I've had, and it helps. But sometimes I look at it and I'm like, gosh, that book just didn't hit, and that book didn't hit, and no one wanted that one, and I've had books that I thought should have been just phenomenal, and they just didn't. And so I think the Last Library has done really, really well. It's won some awards. I've never been an award-winning author before, so that was kind of cool to see that. But
Mhm.
but most of the time, I feel like if I don't write anything else, then no one's going to remember me because it's just you just feel like you're not a success, and unless you're hitting the New York Times bestseller list and selling millions of copies, which I have not done. It's very, very difficult to believe that I've been successful. But family members, friends will say, "Can you believe you've done that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that is kind of cool." When I sit back and think about it at that point, but it doesn't last very long because you just don't think it's going well.
Well, that's interesting because I had one author. She had said she didn't feel successful until she started having to pay taxes on her books and
Oh,
the royalties. She's like, now I feel successful because I have to pay for my success.
that's a good way to put it. I've never thought
Yeah.
about that. So, huh.
As soon as the government wants a piece of what you're doing, then you're being successful, you
Well, in
know?
that case, I am successful then because I pay taxes on those books.
Well, I will say, once we, locked in the interview for this, I was telling my friends, I told my wife, I was like, this is a great, this is his name. People know his name because they knew when I would say Frank Cole, and they're like, oh, yeah, I know him. There's some authors that they're like, what did they write? But they knew you by name.
Really?
So,
Oh,
yeah.
well, I
So,
like
and one of
that.
them,
That's awesome.
and I know, yeah, one of them knew you by name because your wife had written a Dear John letter to their son.
Yeah. Oh, so you're friends with those
No,
people.
I'm not. We were talking. It was before we were recording. We were talking before. Frank's wife had written a Dear John letter to someone, the the son of one of somebody who had come up to get a book signed or something.
It was at a store, and
At a store.
I recognized the name. I'm like, oh, I recognize that last name. I think my wife, dear John, someone with that last name, and it was her son. So, yeah, that was awkward.
Yeah. So
She was
you're
super nice.
known for lots of things,
Yeah,
book
all good,
writing and
all good
heartbreaking,
things.
all good
Yes.
things, all good things. Talk to me about the Potions Masters because from what I can see, that's been a very successful series for you.
That is probably it. You can't, it's hard to pick a favorite series because if you've written lots of books, you love them all. They all hold a special place. But if I had to pick a series that I would want to be known for the when I die on my gravestone, if they did that, it would be for Potion Master. I love Potion Masters. I wish I lived in that world. I think it's a world I would love to live in. I would love to write more books in that series and continue on with the story. It really holds a special place for me. And yeah, it's just a series of society of potion masters that live in our neighborhoods and live amongst us. And there is the main character is a 12-year-old who's a natural potion master, and he gets caught up in a potion war that started by his evil grandfather. And it's a trilogy, and it's yeah, it's a lot of fun. I loved it. I loved researching for it. I always tell people that was my favorite book to research for, and they're like, "Researching for a magical world about potions?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, because most of the ingredients, if not, I'd say 99% of the ingredients are actual ingredients. You can't make a potion, but I've researched, the countries and the areas where they could be found, and it was just a lot of fun. So
So for fans of Potion Masters of the series, you what you are saying is that there is a at least a hope and perhaps a potential of additional books?
yeah, it's probably a fool's hope.
Ah,
It's I guess, a lot of times it just depends on the publisher, and what they feel will resonate with readers, and it would be a different story because that trilogy of those that story ended, but there are so many characters that I could write spin-off tales. I would love to write more. I actually get emails. I actually That's not the one I get the most emails from. The one I get the most emails from about is Champions Quest. That's another book series that's only 2 books. I get a ton of emails asking when I'm going to write a third one because it does leave it kinda open, and my answer is always like, "I hope one day I get to write a 3rd one," but I do think I will finish that series one day. My plan is because that one is left open.
well, and you're not supposed to judge books by their covers, but Potion Masters and Champions Quest, they've got some great covers.
Yeah, they're awesome
Great
covers.
covers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was one of the hardest experiences that you've had while writing or publishing or marketing a book, and how did you overcome that challenge?
So it just somewhat recently, The Legend of the Last Library. I submitted it, and again, this was a book that was pantsed. I gave him an idea, gave him a synopsis but it was a rough synopsis of what I was going to do, and then I turned it in, and I felt really good about it. And my agent thought it was really, really strong. And then I had a meeting with the editors, and they're like, "Yeah, you got to rewrite this. You got to rewrite this." Pretty much, it felt like I rewrote the whole book. I did. I mean, all of the elements were there, but I had to add new parts of the story. I added new characters. I removed characters. It was a grueling process, and it really kind of shook me a little bit because I hadn't had to do that in a long time. Um, but that book is the best, probably the best all round book that I've written. So I had to do that to get to that level of quality for me, but it was the hardest thing. It really made me wonder if I could keep doing this, keep writing, just
Wow.
because it was so hard. But that, but it's. I think a lot of authors they're coming out. They don't realize the amount of editing because the editors that's their job. They know they see all these issues and problems that I can't see, and I couldn't see it until I've rewritten it, and then I've actually gone back and looked at the original draft, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this is I needed to rewrite this whole book," but at the time, you think, I'm amazing. I don't need to rewrite this." And they're like, "Yeah, you're not that great. You gotta rewrite this whole thing."
And it was Shadow Mountain, so they're really friendly about
Oh,
it, right?
yeah.
They're
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, they're all my friends, and so I never felt like they were, uh that there wasn't that friendship, there wasn't that trust there. I felt they always trusted me. I just didn't know how to do it. And but now I'm so glad I did. So I think that's a good lesson to learn. It was super hard, but the end product is way better. It's my best written book that as far as how the story comes together and the themes that are told in that story. I think it really is the strongest book I could have put out for myself, but it was miserable. It was miserable rewriting that whole thing, and so I never felt like they were angry with me or they were finished with me or anything like that. I never got that. I'm really close friends with them, and they were just being brutally honest,
Yeah.
and that's what an author needs to hear, even though I hate it. You hate hearing it.
You spend all that time writing and you're like, "And you want me to do it again?"
I know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "And where did I go off course?" Like, "Well, the whole book." I'm like, "Oh,
So really early on. So
yeah,
what you're
yeah." Right.
saying
So that
is
when you that first line, after that, yeah, I just start over.
Okay, okay, I can do that. That's easy.
Yeah.
Well, dovetailing with that, maybe it is the Legend of the Last Library, but what's been one of the most rewarding experiences that you've had after writing or publishing a book?
Um, yeah, I would say it's the last library. Seeing the fruits of that, it's been on some school lists. It's won some awards that I didn't, I'd never been and maybe I'd been in consideration before. I just didn't know about it, but I've been able to travel a little bit with it. I've got some places that want me to come and speak because of that book. I think it really resonates with a lot of people because the theme of that story is very real, even though it's a futuristic dystopian type novel. There's a lot of things that people feel could be happening and could happen, and so I think that's probably the most rewarding, I would say, um, of the series of all the books I've written. I would say that one is probably the most rewarding, but it was also the most brutal. So
We'll give our listeners and viewers a synopsis or an idea of what the book is about. And is it part of a series?
Not yet. I don't know if it will be
Okay.
a series or not. So, it's a standalone dystopian novel. It takes place hundreds of years in the future, and in the future, a great calamity has happened, and which wipes out most of the trees. It also impacted paper, and so because of something that happened, there isn't paper. There aren't paper books. People go looking for scraps of paper because it's worth a lot of money. You can find for scrap of paper for auctions and whatnot. And no one reads in the future. They just download their books into their mind with a little device, and it's kind of gives you like the Cliff Notes version of the story. But this girl Junie, she can read because her grandfather taught her how to do that. And she is a plifter, a paper lifter. She goes looking for paper because she's trying to make money for her family, for her grandfather, who's very sick. And in the process of doing this, along her journey, she discovers a book and she thinks she's going to be wealthy. It's going to solve all her problems. And then something happens that compels her to read that book and it changes her. She has this connection with the story she's never had before because she's never read a book. She's always downloaded stories.
Mhm.
And in the process, she discovers this secret list of clues that leads her and her friends on a journey to find the last library on Earth that was put away and put underground to protect it. And of course, she's not the only one. There's a organization that's looking for it as well, and so she's got to hunt to find the last library.
Yeah, these secret societies and their
Uh,
plots
th-
trying to
yeah, they're
always got
awful.
something going on. Yeah.
They won't leave everyone alone.
So whenever there's a treasure, there's always a society,
Yeah,
always surrounded. That sounds very applicable. While you're talking about it, it sounds very applicable to current day themes of there's a lot of information digitally available, and you could have synopses provided for you. You can go into Chat GPT and just get
yeah,
a synopsis on everything, cliff notes on everything. Um, but you're saying that there's tremendous value in
yeah.
actually sitting down and physically reading a book. What gave you that idea? That connected to speaking to kids and sort of the challenges that they have in the digital age?
Yeah, I 100% think, I everyone wants something faster. And the
Mhm.
idea for the story kind of came from my AirPods. I was listening to an audiobook and it was kind of a slog. I was getting through a book and it was taking a long time and I'm like, oh, it'd be great if I could just get through this and get the idea and move on. I'm like, oh, that'd be kind of cool if there was a device that could do that. And then you start thinking, well, what's the danger? What do you give up if you get everything so easy? If everything comes so quickly, what do you lose? And I think with stories, if it comes so fast that you don't have to work for it. And when you read a novel or I mean I think audiobooks too. I think when you listen to an audiobook, you can have that same journey. You experience a connection with the characters and a connection with the story, and it's different for different people. Like I might read The Lord of the Rings, and I get something, and my favorite characters could be different than someone else's favorite characters, and my connection and it has a different impact on me because of when I was reading it and what was going on in my life when I read it. Where if it was just downloaded instantly and I get the idea and it's like a movie trailer and I'm like, yeah, it's like a movie trailer that spoils all the movie and you're like, okay, I've seen it. I know what's going to happen. Um, then you really don't experience that story. And I think in this digital age where everything is so easy, that this book kind of um, explores what would happen if the information that you're getting is being controlled by somebody else. So you don't get the information that you think you're getting. You don't get the full story because it's being controlled or being altered or edited. And you have no other way of getting it because it's all through the same device that everyone uses. And so when you have an actual library with printed books with things that cannot be altered, that's when you get the real story and the real information. So yeah, I think it's a lot of stuff that could happen. I think it does happen. AI, you uh, you go on Google or any of these apps and you type something in, you get some information. I'm like, oh, that's good. That's the truth. Well, maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's been
Yeah.
you know curated for what you're looking for, and it's not the whole truth to the story.
Well, we are seeing that too. I mean, there's countless examples. I don't know how well people research it, but there's countless examples of AI actually telling what the programmer has told them to tell, and it's not necessarily the truth. Or it just gets things, it embellishes things. And so, if you take that as gospel and you're not doing your own research or critically thinking, then yeah, it is a
Yeah,
definite possibility.
absolutely.
I like the idea of taking time to read a story. What you were saying about how it has a greater impact as you're processing and not just quickly downloading the story because I'm seeing that right now with my own kids. We're going through the Harry Potter series. I was never a major Harry Potter fan, but they are. They love it, and so I'm going through the stories and just taking time to either read it or play the audiobook for them, and you just like a little bit of a chapter a night, and they process it and they talk about it, and we go to school and they come home and they're excited and it's a shared experience. It's so much better than if, as you say, a book could just be downloaded into the brain. Here we are sharing a story and an experience together, and that is just much more rewarding than just having a quick story told to you, or
I
downloaded.
100% agree. I think it's well, Harry Potter is a cultural experience.
Hmm.
And that was before. I mean, when that came out, that was before the digital craze and all that. People were all reading that book, and
Oh, yeah.
millions and millions and millions of people are reading that book. And I still read Harry Potter all the time. I just love that story because of the characters, the connection, um, and yeah, I read. So we talked about doing voices. My wife and I would read that book together when we were first married, and I would do the voices when I would read the books, and we were in a basement apartment, and our upstairs neighbor couldn't stand it. She would hear me doing voices at 11 o'clock at night, and she'd pound on the floor, and it was too loud, and I would pound back. And her name was Lucia, so I call her Lucius, like Lucius Malfoy. I don't think she's passed away, but she was a very nice lady. She loved my wife. She did not like me very much because I was kind of obnoxious, 20 something years ago when I.
That's good. That is good. Yeah, the were you doing the your own iterations of the voice or like the Jim Dale versions of the voice? Because those
Yeah,
I've
I
heard of
wish I could do
those.
Jim Dale. Jim Dale's phenomenal. Yeah, or Stephen Fry. Those guys do amazing voices, but no, mine were just, Harry Potter. So,
Yeah, good. I mean, like I said, like we said, no authors do their own voices. Jonathan Stroud
no,
would disapprove of us doing this. It's very
yeah,
British,
I,
very
I need to meet
uptight.
Jonathan. I need to meet Jonathan. You need to hook me up. I'll teach him the ways of doing
Yeah,
voices.
he's very funny. It just that so I was building a rapport with him and we were talking and I was very surprised when he said, "No, I don't do that." And I was like, "Oh, of course you don't. You already have the British voice, so why would you be doing
And
voices?"
he's super successful, so it's like, okay, maybe that's the key. If I'm doing
Yeah.
voices, I'm not as successful as Jonathan Stroud because his books are amazing.
Yeah. What can teachers and parents do to help inspire a love of reading in young children? You said you have 3 kids, but they're basically almost all your youngest is
Uh,
17 right now. Yeah.
17, yeah, she's a senior, and so she's almost done. Um, yeah, it's difficult because I'm an author and I'm surrounded by books and I work at a bookstore. I'm surrounded by books all my life. Everywhere I go, if you go into my, I mean, you look at my office, there's just books and weird knickknacks and Harry Potter stuff and just all around. And for the longest time, my kids weren't great readers. And it's because they were still, they knew how to do it. They were very intelligent, but it wasn't entertaining for them. And my daughter was, she was one that just never wanted to read. And then she found her book. She found the books that she loved, and then I think last year she read 100 novels. She outreads
Wow.
all of us. So I think a lot of times for educators and librarians and teachers, it's not giving up if they don't love or fall in love with the books that you're providing them. It's just providing an avenue or a way for them to find something that they do like. I think Diary of a Wimpy Kid is one of the most amazing book series out there because I call it a gateway book. If you can fall in love with that story, which is not hard to do, you read Diary of a Wimpy Kid, it's amazing, so funny, and then all of a sudden they read that and they read like 20 of those books, and then they find something else that maybe has some illustrations, and then soon they're reading novels because they found what they like and what they enjoy. So my daughter just had to find what she enjoyed, and then my oldest son, Jackson, he's 23. He's written, I think, 3 novels now. He's writing books.
Wow.
I didn't know that he was gonna be a writer, and, uh, he's doing very, very well with that, learn that his own starting his own journey, and he's really good. He's really good at writing, so
So is he going to submit the novels to anyone you know, or
he's starting that process. He's starting the process of trying to find an agent, which is very difficult.
yeah.
And I think he's self-published. He did the indie route with a book, just like a short novella, and he's writing all the time. So I'm excited to see where he goes with it and help him out when I can if he listens to dad.
If that's a big if,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
boys don't typically listen to dad
No.
until they get much older. Yeah.
Yeah. And you
Somebody
realize,
said,
hey, he was smart.
I I had a yeah, it was that's the Mark Twain quote. Um I was when I was a kid, I thought my dad was an idiot, and then 20 years went by, and I was astounded at how much he had learned in the time between.
That's a
Something, I
good
mean, I
quote.
butchered the quote, but I was
That's a
astounded
good
by how
quote.
much he had learned.
Yeah.
Um, what advice would you give to aspiring authors who are struggling to either finish or publish their book?
You know, it's I think there's a lot of ways to become a published author nowadays. I think I mean, I've known several independent authors that are very successful and their books are amazing and they found their circle and they're able to sell their books and be successful. Um, but because there's so many different ways to do it, I think a lot of times rejection is we don't want to be rejected at all. We don't ever want to feel rejection. And I think rejection's okay. It's okay to be rejected, developing a little bit of thick skin, not just if your dream is to be a traditionally published author, which it doesn't have to be that. Uh, uh, that those first couple of rejections do not define you. Do not that doesn't mean that you're not going to make it. So I think a lot of times some authors say, I'll just self publish, which is great because you could be very successful. But it's also that's a different game altogether. That I've tried to take a stab at that, and I'm not successful at doing that at all. I don't know how to do that. But I think developing some thick skin, uh, receiving that rejection, and realizing that it doesn't define you, you can still keep at it and work on your craft. Also, I think agents and editors are people. We talked about Shadow Mountain and how I'm really good friends with all of them, and I love them. They're fantastic, and they're editors. And a lot of times we put editors and agents on this pedestal where we're like, oh gosh, they're just so important, and I'm not important. They're just people. They want to make a connection with an author, and if they like you and they want to work with you, they'll find ways to work with you. And I think that's what's happened with Shadow Mountain. I hope they haven't gotten rid of me yet. We'll see after this next book I turn in. But we get along and they know my writing style and we connect, and even though it may not be the book they're looking for, it's not like we're moving on, we don't want to work with you anymore. It's more like, okay, well, what else do you got? So,
Finishing a book is one question. That's, I mean, there's a lot of ways in which sometimes just finishing a book requires more time. It's just a period of gestation. It just needs more time for
yeah.
you to mature as a person. But in terms of publishing a book, I think the most successful thing is networking, just going to conferences, meeting people, talking to
Yep.
people. That's it, you know, and who you know in a way.
It is. I think that's how I got my start. I was at a writing conference and I met James Dashner, incredibly successful author with the Maze Runner
Yeah.
series, and he introduced me to Cedar Fort, who was his first publisher. And I think because of that introduction, they were like, "Yeah, we'll take a look at your book because you met us and you have a
Mhm.
connection." And that book wasn't published, but it ended up being the start of my writing journey and my first 7 books. And then I did something, I remember, I think Chris will probably remember this, maybe not, but I was on stage for a book launch for another author, J. Scott Savage. So Jeff Savage, very successful author, with middle grade, and he was doing a
Yeah.
book launch, and he asked me to be on the stage, and I had dressed up in a green morph suit with aluminum foil with a big bucket of steam, and I made a fool of myself on the stage. And Chris Schobinger came up and says, I really want to do a book with you. And I think that was the start of the relationship, was me being an idiot on the stage. And so I should find that picture somewhere, but that's the picture of me on the stage that got me at least an audience with Chris Schobinger, I think. I don't know. I saw to write a book that he liked, but
Now I got a whole host of other follow-up questions about what kind of
yeah.
conference was this,
Yeah.
and what kind of person is Chris if he wants to publish. He's like this guy right here dressed up in
That
this
guy right
costume.
there.
I want what he's putting out.
And if it was like serious, like self-help or nonfiction books, it wouldn't have been. But it's like, oh, he's a middle grade author. Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So how would you define success as an author? I mean, there was a joke earlier about this. You know, one of the authors had said, "I was paying taxes on it, and that's what was my success." But for you, day in day out, writing and publishing, how would you define successful writing?
Um, Gosh, you know, I do have all my books on a shelf, and so I can see them. I think creating stories, connecting with readers, um, that to me is successful. It's hard. It's very hard to look at my own career and say that was successful because I'll tell you, um, a lot of times you look at every one of my books and I might have thought it was a success, but maybe the publisher did not. Maybe the publisher had expectations that this book was going to sell so many copies and it didn't. So even though it may have sold more than I would have thought it would have, it was not a success. I look at all my 15 books that have been put out in the world, and maybe one or two of them would be deemed as a success by the publisher. And that's difficult when you look at that and you're like, okay, that's really hard when even the publisher's like, "Yeah, that was a bomb. That tanked." They would never say that. Well, they might. Depends on the publisher. They might say it to you. I actually I think I have had that said to me, not by Shadow Mountain. Um, so it's it's hard to determine what is successful, but I think the fact that you're still creating stories and you're still in the game and you're still writing, even
Yeah.
if it's not published, you're creating a story that you love and someone reads it and they enjoy it. I think that's the success of it.
Yeah.
It's for someone else, taking a moment to step back and looking what you have accomplished. Maybe you've written 5 books and none of them are actually published, but you wrote 5 books. You wrote 5 stories that are out in the world that someone's gonna be able to find one day, and that's pretty impressive.
Well, to that end, have any readers or a reader have they shared a message with you that was inspiring or moved you?
Yeah, I've had a couple. I had one that was, unexpected. I was at a book signing probably 2 years ago, maybe yeah, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and, there was another author there that's, I was next to Brandon Mull. So Brandon Mull's super successful. He's an amazing guy. He's a really good friend of mine, and of course, he's got lines, and I didn't have a line. I had a couple people come up, and then one lady came up and this is kind of a sad story, but she said it was one of my first books, the Hash Brown Winter series. This one came out a long time ago, and her son was going through. He was very ill, and she gave him these books, and they brought him a lot of joy until he passed away. And
Ah,
so she came to get one of the books signed, and I was like, I didn't realize he had passed away. I was like, "Oh, so what's his name?" And she said, "Well, he did pass away about a year ago." And that just kinda crushed me, but at the same time, they said, "We just wanted to meet you because you brought him a lot of joy during this last phase of his life." And that I was like that tore me apart because, the whole time I'm thinking, "This is dumb, no one's here, why am I even here?" I could be doing anything else on a Thursday night, and no one's here to see me, no one cares, and then this person came through, and it just kind of gave me perspective of, so that was awesome and devastating at the same time, but, yeah, pretty cool.
I just think it's important that we share the best stories that we know, and that ultimately, even if you're not a writer, you are writing the story of your own life, and just believe a good story. Believe in the literal journey of your life that you can go on and do good things. And so, as people read your stories, whatever walk of life that they are in, what is it that you hope they come away with? What are some of the themes that you really try to bring home in your writing?
That's a good question. I usually all my stories have friendship in them. Either characters that have this group of friends, like the Hash Brown Winter series. I keep going back to it. It's my first book, but um, uh, it's an eclectic group of friends that accept everybody. They're all accepting of everybody. I remember one time there was a librarian that gave me a review, and she didn't. I don't think she liked the very first book of Hash Brown, and then by the end, she's like, "I've really grown to love these characters because they just accept everybody, and it doesn't matter what this kid looks like, what this kid's background is, what they've done." There's a kid in the series that he wets his pants a lot, so he's wearing a diaper, and they're still best friends with him. It's fine. That's okay. They don't judge him for that. And I really love that that quote from her because I'm like, yeah, I kind of think my stories always have good versus evil. And uh there's always like somewhat of a hero's journey where a kid has to
Mhm.
figure out what who he really is and what he can really do or what she can really do. Um, and then overcoming obstacles. But I think friendship is there's always this element where working together. Um, I don't know. I think that's a big theme in my stories. I think I love weird stuff. Like you talked about Sasquatch and ghosts and all. I love anything weird, and I love trying to take a weird idea and make it feel it's normal. That's fine. That's I was telling that to my son recently. I'm like, to take something weird and make it feel like that's just normal in your story. And I think embracing the weird is important. I think if we can embrace the weird and look at things differently, then we're happier people anyways. So,
I think that's going to be the title of this episode. Embrace the weird. I like that.
embrace the weird. I love it.
Embrace the weird. Well, where can people follow you and support what you're doing?
So I'm on all those social medias. I usually, if you see me on social media, if you find one of my videos, they're just lip syncing videos. I was
I
asked one
watched a
time.
couple of them in preparing for this interview. That I think I just got your most recent one. That was good.
Yeah,
Funny.
yeah. I was asked one time, like, "Hey, you need to have a social media presence." And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. I mean, I was on Facebook and I would, make comments or post pictures and then they're like, "Yeah, you should probably get on TikTok and Instagram." And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. I tried to do writing advice. No one cared. No one listened. So then I did a lip syncing video, and that actually was kind of fun. And so I've been doing it now for the past 2 or 3 years. I will post, uh, upcoming things that are going on, and occasionally writing tips and whatnot on Instagram and TikTok. You can find me. I think it's Frank L. Cole or Frank Cole Writes. That's usually my website's frankcolewrites.com. But that's where you can find me. And then occasionally I'll do events. I've got some events coming up, StoryCon and Story Makers, those type of conferences. I'll be there.
Yeah, and then if you're talking about not making a deadline. Just hope that your editor or publisher doesn't look at your account and see all the videos you're making.
I think they do, and I think they're like, "If you stop making these videos, you might be able to write your book." And I'm like, "Well, you told me to be on social media."